the look, to the purpose, to the reason, and thinking through all those things when we come up with a new property. On the agency side, I play the role of a more traditional creative director, where I'm pitching for business. I'm going in a room and telling a story, and hopefully telling a good enough story that we take on a new piece of business. And most recently, we got to know each other through the creation of Clusterfest, which was kind of an amazing collaboration between the two companies.
We do not like you guys. Let's be very clear. There's just very firm with that.
Well, it's interesting. We were just talking, even when we were over here before, is that when the easiest way to get to success in a collaboration is just to have good people. And I think we find that the teams on both sides really just want to do something great, I think, as you had said earlier. And we're both really passionate about the concept. And it's just fun. It's just a good group of people to work with. We love to riff. We love to iterate. We love to try things. We love to give feedback. We're not afraid to give feedback that's critical in the right way. But it's been a great partnership, and it's continuing for 2018. So.
I have a question. Look, hold on. I'm just going to, off the top of my head. Hey, PJ, what brands are embracing festival models or cultural tenets?
That's a great question.
Isn't that a great question? I think you'd be able to expound on that answer off the top. No, shock.
So, it was an interesting thing. I've been at Superfly for about 5 years, and when I started, a lot of the conversations that we were having with brands on the more agency services side of the business was, we were getting a lot of meetings. People wanted to meet us. But what we found was it was really difficult to get past the fact that we made Bonnaroo. And a lot of these meetings we found, most of the people we were talking to just wanted tickets to Bonnaroo. And we were really interested in hearing about our creative services or our social media or all these other things we were doing. But over the last 5 years, I think two things have happened. That we've shifted that perception. But I think even more importantly, festival culture has just become culture. It's really just a part of, it's not, there's no distinction. 10 years ago, going to a festival was still kind of a unique thing that people were talking about. Now everyone's going to festivals. There's hundreds of festivals out there. And brands are recognizing that. Brands like Google, for example, a couple of years ago, they were looking to reinvent their developers conference. And we proposed looking at a conference from a different point of view and saying, the way they were treating developers and the way that they put the conference on was as if they were these sort of dark individuals in caves typing code in the darkness of their room. And we said, you really should start looking at this differently in terms of the way that you build these experiences. The developers are the Renaissance artists of our time. They're the ones that are propelling culture and society and economies forward. So we said, why don't you treat them like rock stars? And we proposed turning the developers conference basically into a festival. Google has Shoreline Amphitheater in their backyard, so it's right there. This is an opportunity to turn this into a celebration, program music, bring creativity that's a reflection of what a lot of these developers do. And we really set out to reinvent what a conference is, but really how people perceive the attendees that the conference is actually for. And we're seeing that all across the board. And media companies like Viacom and a lot of other media companies now are coming to us and looking to engage their audiences through the festival lens, or a lot of times through a particular lens that we have. So as these years have gone on, I've just seen a lot more opportunity come our way, a lot more interest in trying to interpret these media brands through the lens of what is festival culture, but again, what I think has really just become sort of tenet of culture overall. So.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? When we decided to do Clusterfest with comedy, we knew that we wanted to do something with stand-up, and we knew that we wanted to do something that's going to differentiate, because there's so many festivals, right? To your point, I think it's going to grow, but it's also really important to kind of differentiate. And so the stand-up part was, not easy to book, but easy in the sense of like, all right, if we get names like Jerry Seinfeld and Kevin Hart and Bill Burr and Sarah Silverman, that's going to work really well, and that'll draw people in. But how do you create an experience that really feels differentiated? And from that, I think we spent a lot of time talking about like, how do you bring TV to life? That was sort of our big push. And so we wanted to sort of, and also to do it actually agnostically, right? So it was a Comedy Central branded thing, but we wanted to have shows that were not on our network. So we had South Park but we also wanted to bring to life Seinfeld and Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And working with you guys, literally we built out the Always Sunny in Philadelphia bar. We had Mac show up and play Philadelphia for people. We did a Seinfeld separate recreation and had the Soup Nazi. But I think, it's important for brand, like everybody wants to be that special snowflake. And like even for us like going forward, like within Viacom, like now, kind of all the other Viacom brands in a great way, like want to do a festival. And part of our challenge is figuring out like, all right, like how do you do a music festival that stands out, right? Like how do you kind of distill the DNA of these brands in a way that isn't, because honestly, like so many people are doing it so goddamn well. So I think that's a really interesting challenge on the media brand side, is how you translate these things into the physical space in a way that's really compelling and honestly doesn't feel overly corporate, and especially if you're making people pay for a ticket, and that kind of builds that audience loyalty, so that ideally by the time you get to year 3 when you announce, you're selling out. And that's the goal, right, is to have people, every media brand, whether they tell you or not, wants to be recognized as something that's truly authentic. And so what we create with Cluster or everywhere else, like the goal is that when it just becomes that thing. And then that's it, right? In the same way that Bonnaroo or Outside Lands are just like, people love them for that. We want people to love Clusterfest for that.
Well, one of the things I think is so interesting about Clusterfest is that it was such a new idea. We riffed on all these different programming concepts that weren't just music, right? I think we're kind of at this tipping point where it's not really just about music festivals anymore. There's so many opportunities to see these acts in so many different venues. So how is it evolving? And I think for year 1, we've riffed on all these different things, and some of them were really out of the box. For example, there was a live reading of Wayne's World with the comedians that were booked on the festival. And like all of us are looking at these things and we're all vying for different things that we want. I remember thinking to myself, no one's going to sit through a 2.5-hour reading of a script. We went to the reading, and it was easily the best thing of the whole festival. I mean, Tic Notaro as Rob Lowe, it's like incredible, and just the strange combination of nostalgia and talent and mismatching of casting. I mean, it was one of the most compelling things of the festival. So I think it's important as we're exploring these new spaces beyond music and things like comedy or other genres that other niches that we're looking at, is to take chances, is to just roll the dice on some things. And some of these things may not work, but some of them are going to surprise us, and we're going to learn from them. We're going to be able to evolve through some of this experimentation. I think it's a testament to just the partnership from Catalyst. There's been so much experimentation and willingness to try things, and it's been a lot of fun. But I think that's really where this space is heading. Is not a music festival anymore. It's about a holistic experience. It's about the stories you're going to tell when after the fact, that you're going to share on social media. These unique things that you can't really anticipate. For example, with Bonnaroo, we're bringing a lot more emphasis this year to the campgrounds. We realize that that's one of the most special parts of Bonnaroo. So there's a lot more programming that's going to happen. There's a lot more surprise experiences. So we're going to attract people to the festival using the lineup and some of those key things that do sell tickets and draw people out. But there's going to be a slew of new unexpected things that we use to really enhance the things about that particular festival that make it special. And I think we're looking at all our properties that way. What is the differentiator? What makes it its own thing? I think it's a constant evolution to kind of keep up with how this stuff is evolving. I think it's these niches and these really unique experiences that are going to be the big shift we're going to start seeing in the next few years. So.
And the reading was interesting too, because what it actually started with is we'd gone to the Just for Laughs festival, and we'd seen a staged reading of The Big Lebowski that had actually used the cast of the old X-Men movies. So they had like Jennifer Lawrence and Michael Fassbender, and we thought it was a really neat idea. And what we were looking at from the Comedy Central standpoint is like, how can we do stuff with some of our talent who maybe aren't stand-ups? And Broad City and Abby and Alana came to mind, and we started playing with the idea of like, could we do some sort of like reading with a buddy comedy? And that's where we came up with, let's pitch him on Wayne's World and swap the sexes. And it was, and then nobody knew for sure, but it was great. And so, from the Comedy Central standpoint, like, how awesome is that? where you can give people a way to kind of see the genius of having a lawn in Broad City, but through a totally different context and format. And yeah, it killed it. And I think those non-traditional surprise and delight pairings, certainly within Clusterfest, and I think also for a lot of other festivals, like that's where I think people get real joy. Is those moments where you put two things together that you truly can't find anywhere else, to your point, right?
Yeah. So we did a new festival called Lost Lake in Phoenix. And when we were concepting it, there was a couple of us on the creative team and the operations team who wanted to turn. Well, first of all, there's a lake, there's a lake in the middle of the property that we activated. And that's very unique for us.
It does not sound very lost.
It does not sound very
lost. No, the lost.
It's not very lost.
No, it's not very lost.
But we thought there's an opportunity to do something with this. It's the thing that differentiates from the festival. And we thought, well, why don't we make that the Cinderella's castle? Like, let's make that the thing that everybody talks about. And there was a lot of pushback. Everyone's like, we can't market that. People are going to come to a music festival to see a lake spectacle. Like, how are we going to sell tickets in the first year? Well, we ended up making an investment in the lake and building these 12 fire fountains in the middle of the lake. And 4 times every night, there was a show where the entire light system and fire system in the lake became synchronized to different songs. So we had Bohemian Rhapsody at one point. We had an opera song at one point. We had all these different genres. And we closed the festival with Purple Rain. And it's literally the thing that everybody wants to talk about. And we're going to be investing more in it, doing lasers next year, doing all kinds of stuff. But again, the new things are scary. You know, when you think about, when you have this idea, you immediately start worrying about ticket sales and money, or how are we going to justify the cost, and how, you know. And the truth is, you got to roll the dice. You got to try some of these things, because a lot of times we surprise ourselves, like with the live reading, and then, you know, sometimes your instincts will be confirmed, and sometimes they won't. But that's kind of the business we're in, is bringing people to things and just wowing them, exciting them with something that they didn't expect. And in a field where there's just so many music festivals with stages and bands, and a lot of the same bands, and you can see it 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 different festivals, you know, it's time for us to get more creative and explore some things that are a little outside our comfort zone, and kind of see what happens. So.
And, I want more lasers in Clusterfest. Why don't we have more lasers?
That's a great point.
I also want the dancing Macarena dog. Oh, sorry, I'm giving away a programming point. That may or may not be happening, but I'm very excited about that. I think from the media side too, it's you just have to find partners that are kind of willing to take those risks. Like, yeah, it was terrifying for us. I mean, like Dave Derrick and I over there, like, it sweated for a year and a half on this thing. But I think if you find, and I will say, like, as a media brand, like, too, like, finding partners like Superfly, finding partners like Another Planet, but then also, like, on the flip side, finding media brands that are kind of willing to stretch and invest and recognize that you can't do the same old. Like,
I'm curious about that. So what was that process like for you guys? Because typically you're selling media against properties that are much more easy to quantify. And now you're selling sponsorship against a festival like Clusterfest, which no one's really seen before. What was that process like for you guys?
Hard.
Yeah.
It was very hard. I mean, honestly, even to kind of, for us, we'd been doing tours and events for like 4 or 5 years, right? Where we'd go and take out a comic and then attach a sponsorship kind of as an added value. But we really weren't kind of controlling it. And maybe 2.5, 3 years ago, we kind of looked at the business model and said, like, it feels like there's something bigger there. And what actually happened, you know, is it was when Live Nation did Oddball. And you know, we saw it and we're like, shit, it's a great idea. You know, and that kind of got us thinking and talking to people, and then we went to the head of Comedy Central and the head at the time of Viacom, and sat in a room with a bunch of numbers and pitched this idea, and it was interesting. It actually, like, they bought it. I think a lot of people took a lot of leaps. So people took leaps on the revenue side, people took leaps on the expense side, even ad sales. Like, a lot of people kind of said, you know what, like, the media business is changing. We can't. That's actually honestly been the most freeing thing about the past 2 years, is for all the weird shit that is happening out there in the media landscape. What has been great about Viacom particularly, and I know this is going to sound surprising, but it's true, especially with our new CEO, is like, all of a sudden, we're really open to new things. This Clusterfest never would have happened 5 years ago. We're in podcasting in a way that never would have happened 5 years ago. We're taking on new ideas across the board. MTV, CMT, Logo, like all those properties suddenly, because we have to. It is evolve or die for media brands, and we're seeing shit happen with Netflix and Hulu, and we all have to kind of roll up our sleeves and get in there, and while it's terrifying, holy shit, are the opportunities there, and really, we look towards this room to find the next big thing. We look at something like Punch Drunk and Sleep No More, and is there a comedic answer to that, or is there a music answer to that? Like, we look at VR and AR, like, we want to be in those spaces, and we are willing to invest. And I gotta say, like, personally, it's been, and I think speaking on behalf of the team, it's been one of the most kind of rewarding years of our lives. It's like all of a sudden, there's all this enthusiasm to do stuff that we never wanted to do before. It's hard. There's a lot of shit that we don't know how to do that we have to figure out. Like, how do you match ad sales and on the ground and break this all up? But I think it is driven by a true desire that, like, we're storytellers. Right? That's why we got into this business. That is what excites us. It's why we wake up in the morning. And so to kind of get these new sandboxes to play in is awesome. Like Comedy Central, MTV, all these people, like all the development guys, love it. Love it. Like they love Clusterfest. And that enthusiasm sweeps across the entire place. And so the support, while it is hard, it is not hard in the sense of we haven't felt supported. We've been able to kind of, stand on the backs of giants, and we have a giant one team, one dream drive in it, but it's really been pretty great. Should we I don't know how much time we have.
Yeah. We thought if anybody has questions, rather than just kind of us talk about it, if anybody has anything. Yeah.
You guys, are you still involved in Pandora?
Sorry, could you?
You still involved in Pandora?
In Pandora?
Yeah.
No. In terms of what specifically?
Maybe I'm confused. You guys have a transaction with them 3 or 4 years ago?
Maybe a sponsorship deal. I'm not, to be honest, I'm not too sure, but we're not currently.
Are you acquired by somebody else?
Was Superfly acquired?
Yeah.
No. Superfly is still an independent company.
Ticketfly. Okay, I'm sorry. I got the too much fly. Where do you see? I'm from Colorado Springs. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you're doing in the Denver market?
I don't know if I can right now. And we're deep in creative on it right now. So we're spending a lot of time in Denver. We're spending a lot of time in the area, getting to know people there, building relationships with cultural tastemakers, businesses, and really just trying to, we do a lot of our festivals are basically celebrations of cities or of markets. So when we have an opportunity like that, we try to spend as much time as possible in that location to really soak up, what's true to the locals there. Denver and Colorado just happens to be a place that we're all really passionate about. There's a lot of snowboarders and skiers. We have a lot of Superfly ex-employees who've moved to Denver to live there. We've all spent a lot of time there. Most of us have been to venues like Red Rocks and some of those other sort of key music bits about the city and about the region. So right now, I can't tell you anything except that we're there a lot and that we're very excited about what this is going to be. Are we working with Tyler Fay? I'm not sure.
What aren't you telling us, PJ?
No. We might be. I'm not personally working with them.
I don't buy it.
Hey guys, real quick, my name is Amir. So, ton of festivals. It just seems like you got a lot of good traction on the festival. You got a lot of good media, a lot of good exposure. And then the second, it ends, another festival's already in coverage, and your festival's kind of done. Not necessarily yours, but in general. How do you keep it alive? How do you keep it? I mean, is it pretty much finish that one, move on to the next one? Are you guys creating, from your experiences, you creating additional engagement pre and post festival to keep the conversation going?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can speak to Clusterfest. There's a lot of really exciting ideas that are being developed right now for the second year of Clusterfest. Stuff I think we're both really excited to see come to fruition. And some of that is piggybacking on the successes we had last year and kind of evolving certain ideas. But as far as things like Bonnaroo or Outside Lands, which are our longest running festivals, every year we make investments. We come up with new ideas, we try new things out. I mean, over the 16 years of Bonnaroo, there's been everything from a jazz club to, there's so many different ideas that we've experimented with. Not all of them worked, right? To the kind of my earlier point is that sometimes you gotta, 5 minutes. Sometimes you just got to try things, and some of them are going to work. But things like, there's certain things at Bonnaroo and Outside Lands that are now staples of the experience, and it's things that people look forward to going back to. Again, Bonnaroo, a lot of it is the growth of the campground and differentiating that. But the culinary experiences at Outside Lands, a lot of the lighting that we do in Golden Gate Park in the woods, where we've been building upon that. Like I mentioned, Lost Lake, we're going to be investing in the lake and making an even bigger spectacle to kind of, we want that to be special again for the people who were there before. So I think it's really important. You can't get comfortable with this stuff. You've really got to keep leveling it up every year. So.
And I say internally, like we've been talking a lot. I think we recognize it as kind of a missed opportunity that we did this amazing festival, but we didn't. The voice of the festival, like what's the voice of Clusterfest, right? What does it actually sound like? How do you engage with it on social media? How do you get people to kind of care? I think to your point, I'm like, is it a 365-day-a-year cadence? Is it constant marketing messages, right? That it really does feel like that we're adding value, that people want to engage with Clusterfest, that people, want it to sort of be this bigger community. So it's certainly kind of top of our list how to further evolve.
Hey guys, my name's Kenny, I'm from Intercom. I was curious, on your path to creating these incredible events, can you talk a little bit about proving out concepts and your strategies on a more micro level before you had such a success on the macro level?
It's a great question. Over the last 3 years, we've built a more refined development process to be able to vet new ideas and whether or not they're viable. It's a really interesting corporate development thing that we've come up with. And because, for example, right now we have 10 to 15 ideas, right? And rather than just start throwing money at things, we really want to go through some kind of process that lets us know if the opportunity is going to make sense. And it's gradual. It takes a number of years to birth these brands. But I think, Superfly's been around for 20 years now, and I think there's the original partners have brought a sense of humility to everything that we do, to always look back at, both our successes and our failures and learn from them. And a lot of that's been fed into the process that we go through to vet these new opportunities. Does that help answer the question?
I think from our side, I think one of the things is now that we've had a singular success, but seeing it work, it's also kind of looking at how you can kind of crawl, walk, run using other arms. Like, are there branded marketing activations that we might do that could live in Clusterfest? Are there things that were free before that could suddenly become a paid activity? So all of a sudden, you start to look at everything that you do through this lens of like, how can it kind of start to kind of cross-pollinate? And even, I'm going to say amortize, but like, like you can build stuff and put them in one place from a production standpoint too. How maybe we want to, do this thing that used to be a 1-hour special, but we're going to do it at Clusterfest, or do it in an entirely new place around, an MTV thing and build out a festival there. So a lot of kind of ways to sort of take all the various parts and focus it.
Yeah, when you look at what else is happening out there, I think as a business we have enough humility to say we don't have to make every single thing. If we see something that's a great addition to something that we're doing, we'll build a partnership and make that a part of the experience. So we're always, we're always on the lookout for what those things are. So.
We are lacking in humility.
Anybody else?
Hi there. I'm really interested to hear, anyone who works in festivals knows that launching a first-year festival is a nail-biting endeavor. And of course, Clusterfest and Lost Lakes, great successes from big companies. Can you talk about the challenges you faced and some of the, you know, nitty-gritty things that maybe you're going to do differently next year based on what you learned first year?
We talk about this all the time. We just had a big summit at Superfly where we opened everything we've been doing up to kind of ask ourselves the questions. First year events are really tough. You're asking people to come to something that has never existed before. You don't have assets to show off from the last year that shows people having a great time. There was Lost Lake, we had nothing. We did illustrations, actually, of the experiences that we concepted in order to try to sell people and come in to see them. It comes down to really two things that you've got to be very, very good at to get a first year event to happen. The first is programming, and make sure you're really programming to your locale, to your audience, but also to your scale. And that's the thing that we're learning now, because we've got events of this scale of Outside Lands and Bonnaroo, but we also have smaller things. And we're learning that we need to program them a little bit differently. Bonnaroo was always about discovery. We're going to give you all kinds of stuff to check out. And I think at a smaller scale, that's harder to do. You sort of can't be everything to everybody. You have to sort of decide a little bit. And then the brand, the name, the look, the colors, all these things that are emotional hooks for people to make those buying decisions. You've got to really spend time and build brands in a methodical way that eliminates as much of the variables and the risk as possible, and do it in a very iterative process. You need to, it's not just about, here's the logo, here's the look. Here's 9 different versions of this that we can go with, and whittling it down to what's going to be the one that we know, where we have a very good idea is going to be the right look. And it takes time, and it requires a lot more attention now than it used to. I think those two things are really the most important things.
And I would add the ability to sell. When I say that, I don't mean advertisers, I mean the concept. Like, hard is going in to pitch Jerry Seinfeld on why he should do outdoor comedy when nobody's done outdoor comedy in the middle of the Loughran Civic Center. People on a new thing, they don't get it. And it's hard to explain. That right there, like we spent, how much time did we spend trying to figure out how to pitch this thing, and how many meetings, but like, I think really being able to articulate it and to understand it as best you can, and then honestly to kind of like dream it a bit and kind of go on that passion and gusto, because I mean, Jesus Christ, until that thing opened and we were 5 hours in, we were still like, this may work, this may not.
The process is the funny thing too, and a lot of times no one sees this, but there were 900 names that we went through before we landed on Clusterfest. And Clusterfest wasn't 900, it was somewhere probably early on, but we want to go through this as thoroughly as possible to make sure we're really eliminating as many variables as we can. We don't always go that thorough, but it's important to allow that creative process to run its course, and to allow things to play out, allow yourself to see things and consider things. And that could be very time consuming, but if you go through that effort and you've done the thoroughness, you're really eliminating a lot of the risk and the error that you might fall into. And, that's the way we try to look at it, is how can we get this just right through trial and error. So.
We had a lot of special names. I think we are official. Oh yes, we are over our time. We were getting nodded at, so I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much.